Thank you, and you.
Doing okay.
Awesome.
Okay, just wanted just gallery view. Okay, I got gallery view now.
And we've got Diana joining us.
Hey there.
Hello.
Let's see if we can get this video going.
And I'm not sure who Killer Lily is. Hello. Nice to see you. Although I can't see or hear you. Yay. So, for the purposes of the recording, let's just do a round of hello, who are you and where are you? Patty?
I am Patty Schneider. I live in New York State in the USA.
It's lovely to see you with your hair down today.
Yeah, I usually got it up. It's true.
It looks fabulous. And then Diana?
Diana Voisin. I'm in Arizona in the USA.
That's fantastic. And hello, I'm not sure who you are. Your screen says you're Killer Lilla. I'm not sure. I can't hear you. Let's see if I can unmute you. No. There we go.
I did that for my family. I'll try to change it.
Okay, no, it's working. It's working. It's working. We can hear you. How are you?
My name is Anne, and I'm in Maine in the United States.
Hello, Anne. It's lovely to have you here. Thank you so much, ladies, for joining us today. So today we're talking about patterns. Oh, and for those who are watching, I'm Melanie, and I'm in South Africa. So today we're talking about pattern tips and tricks as they relate to upcycling and upcycled textiles and garments. And I'm going to be relying pretty heavily on you ladies for information today because I confess I don't use patterns for anything, and most of my upcycling that I do is kind of hand stitching and cobbling things together that are already made and that already fit me quite well. So I'd really love to hear from you ladies who've had some experience with working with patterns. If there are any tips and tricks that will be helpful to the Upcycled Cloth Collective community. So maybe we can start with you, Patty.
I hope I will be able to give you some tips and tricks because, I've worked mostly, all my sewing life with commercial patterns.
Okay.
And, I've done here and there very small adjustments on them, not major adjustments. I have not made my own patterns, or created my own patterns. When I'm upcycling clothing, the way I do it is I kind of look at what I have. I see, well, maybe I'll take this off, or I'll cut this off at this point, add this, it's kind of cobbling together, sort of like I'm Frankenstein creating my monster, bits and pieces from here and there.
Okay.
But I have yet to have actually taken a piece of clothing apart and used, the individual pieces as like you would use a sewing pattern. I can see myself doing that at some point, though. Maybe getting something, taking it apart, and creating my own pattern, just using it exclusively as a basic pattern.
Okay,
So
and
I hope I'll be able to help here. Somebody will be able to give me tips on creating patterns.
Okay, and when you say you use commercial patterns, is there a brand that works for you? And I know that some people say that some brands of patterns are better than others.
I've used like all the various brands. I find as I've gotten older, I'm just going for the bless you. I'm going for, just the simplest designs. For some reason, I used to like to you know, pick more complicated ones that had all this detailing. And I never thought that it looked any better than a simpler style. So, and I'm making simpler, easier patterns now. And I find they work great for upcycling. Because when I'm making my own fabric, quote unquote, by taking, making a patchwork basically, it just seems to be easier to use a simple pattern on that fabric that I've created. And I've made one nice top doing that, very simple style, but patchwork looks great. And I'm gonna make another one. But yeah, I think, I look for things that say easy sew now,
Okay.
See and sew is, I think, one of maybe Simplicity's lines where it's a very basic style, but who cares as long as it comes out looking well.
That actually makes a lot of sense to say work with simpler patterns. That really makes sense to me. So thank you for that. Diana, do you have any tips?
Well, the thing I would suggest if you're going to draw a pattern is that you use version control, because I found that as I'm working through a project, it makes sense for me to keep track of version 0, version 1, version 2, especially when I'm drafting my own pattern. So my memory is not good. And as much as I'd like to think that I'm doing a simple change, if I write it on the pattern,
yes,
I have it there. A friend brought me a new pattern for a mask, and when he gave me the measurement for the elastic, I wrote it on the pattern, because I knew that when the next time I used the pattern, I would be trying to remember what was the instruction he gave me. So if you think ahead about when you'll be using it, I think that helps. From a commercial pattern perspective, I've been using silhouette patterns, and I find that the lady who runs that particular pattern company has a lot of free videos on YouTube on fitting. And she takes a different approach in that she makes you take a garment measurement as opposed to your measurement, because fit is such a personal thing. And I've seen that with the people when I've altered clothing. Fit for a prom dress is different than fit for a work pant or a nice top. So you want to take that, you want to keep that in mind. Simpler patterns do work better. I'm working on trying to reorganize mine so I have them all in one spot, and see which ones I have and which ones I don't. I've been finding patterns embedded in my fabric, which is not a good habit. Not do that. But I have made patterns. I've made instructions. I've handed out patterns, and I think until you see, one of the things that happens is when you write, you think you're writing clearly. You think your instructions are clear, and really the proof is in the pudding. When somebody can use it and can achieve what they want to achieve, that's fine. The other thing I would also suggest is that if you're taking something apart, that you take pictures as you're taking it apart. Because as much as we'd love to try to remember it, you end up with a tiny little piece and you're trying to remember whether it's under the arm or at the bottom. And so if you have pictures, and they don't have to be fabulous, they just have to show you the thing as you're taking it apart. One of my favorite activities is to take things apart, because then I can see how they went back together. And I remember taking apart a coat because I wanted to see the lining. And when I put the lining when I lined up the lining, I saw that the cutter had used exactly 1 yard and had done this marvelous bias thing where he had used up every piece of fabric. There was no waste in that. And so early on in my sewing career, I looked at that and said, there are people out there who can do these things. And so it was counter. And the reason I took it apart was because it was on a bias. I was trying to figure out why the guy put the lining on the bias, and when I took it apart and laid it on a square, I saw exactly what the question I had in my mind. So, of course,
Okay.
I didn't do anything with it after that. But
So what I found particularly useful about what you've just said is your tip that if you've got any instructions that you need to remember the next time you use the pattern, you actually write it on the pattern. I think that's a very, very useful tip. Thank you, Diana.
Yeah.
And I see Anita has joined us. Welcome, Anita. Thank you.
Good morning.
Hello. And where are you from, Anita?
I'm from New Jersey in the U.S.
Okay, wonderful. We've got all US ladies in. I see this time slot is good for the USA, but I don't think it's very good for Australia. So, Anne Lilla, do you have any tips for us?
I don't think so. I personally love a good Vogue pattern, so I'm a little bit different in that. I love the complicated, complex things.
Okay.
In terms of cycling, what I've been doing the last couple of years is everybody that I know that wants to get rid of fabric gives it to me. So I've been accumulating fabric for years. And so what I tend to do for upcycling is instead of buying fabric, I use the fabric that people have been giving to me. And in fact, I have a personal moratorium about not buying any more fabric, which is a little limiting when you get invited to a wedding or something like that. You might have to go in some bizarre kind of fabric. And so I've been, particularly making masks for everybody and things like that. I mean, it's been a godsend because I just have an attic full of fabric. So that's been really great. I haven't done that many clothing upcycles because I haven't needed that many clothes. I have done a couple, but mostly I've just reused fabric that people have given to me for Christmas presents and making masks by the hundreds and things like that.
Okay. Okay. So you prefer to use simplicity patterns?
Oh, I like Vogue pattern.
Sorry,
I like
Vogue.
the level of just,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
I like to be challenged.
Okay. Okay. And Anita, do you have any tips for us about patterns?
Not a one. I'm afraid.
Okay. Okay.
I'm
You're here
a
to
very,
learn.
very novice sewer, so I'm here to learn.
Okay. Thank you so much for joining us. I appreciate it. And do you have any questions then about patterns for the ladies who are here?
No, I think for me, I mean, I learned in grade school how to use a pattern, and frankly, haven't picked it up since then. But I know it's not that hard. So, for a novice, sewer like I am, to try and use a pattern rather than trying to eyeball it myself, because I just don't have the experience yet.
Okay.
But the part about fit becomes important when I'm upcycling, because I do have things I have where the fit isn't right. So I was kind of looking for ideas or tips on how to handle that sort of thing.
Okay. Okay. Are there any ladies in the group who've got some ideas about that? No. Diana?
I would suggest that when you've got a piece of clothing that already fits, and you have a spot that's a bother, a problem, that you release it. So you pull that, you pick that part of the seam and let it lay flat, and figure out whether it can be recovered from that perspective. My sister had just gotten a job in Dallas, and she brought some jackets that she had, and she has a very flat back, and all of the jackets had been designed to fit a normal body, and her body doesn't quite follow the normal. And so we ended up pulling the seams, just picking the seams where the jackets were having a problem, and then figuring out what we needed to do from there. Some of them were sleeves, so I got to be a little bit more involved. But she was here for 2 weeks, so we had a lot of fun playing with them and getting them right. And then by the time she left, she could do it herself. So sometimes it's a matter of just pulling out that bit of a seam that has a problem, and then just looking to see if you can get it to lay flat with what you have. Sometimes you can't fix it, but you know, if you can't use it, if it doesn't feel right and you can't use it, taking apart a little bit of the seam doesn't. And if you can't get it any better, then you sew it back the way it was and roll forward.
Thank you. That's useful. And Patty, you had some ideas?
Just as relates to commercial patterns, again, I've noticed more recently they've had a tendency when you have one of those patterns that has a range of sizes, you know, 10 through 18. Especially when they have simpler lines, they have instructions on the pattern, you know, because none of us are like perfect measurements. You know, our measurements do not fit perfectly as they are on the pattern. So, you know, you can take your own measurements and they will give you instructions on, okay, so, you know, this is your hip size, this is the bust size, and you can, just showing you how you can, you know, just kind of connect, in other words, connect the dots and kind of make it so that it's going to fit your body better than, you know, just those standard measurements. So it's worth just checking on the, you know, the pattern pieces. They'll usually have a box that has the instructions. And I found that very helpful.
So would you recommend if someone's working from a commercial pattern to actually make a mock-up first, if you know your measurements are a bit different from the pattern that you're working from?
Yeah, I've never done it just because I'm lazy. I mean, I'll be very frank. But
if you have a limited amount of fabric that you want to work with, the best thing to do is make it up out of a muslin or out of another piece that you really don't care about, just to get the fit, and then use that as the pattern.
Okay. And
maybe I'm lazy enough to do that someday.
And Siska has just joined us. Hello, Siska. Thank you so much for joining us. If you'll just tell everybody who you are and where you're from.
Sorry, I'm late. I just got back into the house and I thought, oh, I'm missing my meeting. I'm in the UK and I am ish kind of sober. So yeah, I'm really enjoying these talks. And yeah, just on the patterns, you was it Anita who asked about the upcycling? I learned just go for it, you know, just because in the beginning I was really particular, trying to be perfect about it. You know, as if you would, because when you sew up from scratch, you know, you're particular about how you join things, but sometimes with upcycling, you just have to overrule the perfectionist and make do in some kind of way, you know. Yeah, and for patterns, if you can find one that's really good, you know, make that your basic and work from that. I found to be helpful because my body doesn't fit the normal measurements either. I always have to adjust. And I always started from scratch until I realized, stick to the one that you have and work from there. I saved myself quite a bit of time.
Okay, that's a useful tip. Thank you. Now, for everybody who's watching, there is a lady who does really, really great patterns for particularly reworking kind of dress shirts with collars and cuffs. And her name is Michelle Paganini. And I know she has a Facebook group also. And people absolutely rave about her patterns. So if you are looking for patterns that really work well for reworking dress shirts, she makes beautiful tunic style tops and things like that. And she's very, very clever about how she uses the different parts of the dress shirts. I'm always amazed because she takes very manly looking things and makes them quite feminine and girly. So you can look out for her. Her name is Michelle Paganini. And I know she does some really great patterns that are very useful for upcycling.
I have one of her patterns. I just haven't used it yet.
Okay. So you've still got to try it out.
Right, but it's you know, it's really not so much a pattern as a suggestion way to do it. So it's
Okay.
not like a pattern with pattern pieces and stuff, but it tells you how to deconstruct the shirt, how to reconstruct it. Really very good. And it's, I recall, it's like on PDF, so it's on my computer.
Okay.
Have a
Okay.
stable internet connection.
Okay. All right. Okay. Does anybody else have any tips about patterns that have come to mind that you can think of?
I just have one thing is nobody's mentioned this, but there are some really awesome independent pattern, what would you call, makers out there that have really interesting and really easy patterns to you can get on the internet, and they just come as PDF downloads, and they're really reasonably priced. And I use a lot of those. Really simple to sew, and they cover a huge size range. So for women that are particularly large, the size range is really extraordinary. The two that come right to mind is one is Halla, H-A-L-L-A, and the other one is Love Notions. Those are both available online, and they have a really nice range of children and adult patterns, and I've been really pleased with them. I use them all the time.
Okay. So, Anne, I'm not sure how the video is coming across for everybody else, but for me, I think because of the unstable internet connection, I didn't quite get the name of the second lady that you mentioned. So I'm just going to ask that maybe when I post the video afterwards, would you mind putting the links in the comments for people who are watching? Okay, okay. Okay, so could you give us the second name again? Maybe it'll come through better the second time.
It's Love, L-O-V-E, Notions, N-O-T-I-O-N-S.
Okay, we got it.
Okay.
Awesome. Thank you. And the first one was Halla,
H-A-L-L-A.
Okay, okay, awesome. We got it. We got it more clearly that time. Thank you so much. Okay, are there any final questions? Because we seem to have come to the end of that. What do you ladies have anything that you'd like to say to people who are thinking of working with patterns? Let's start with you, Patty.
I don't I don't know if I have any particular advice besides the things I've already said.
Okay.
But you know, again, starting simple. You know, if you're a beginner, you know,
Okay.
just as you know, they would have taught. I mean, I learned from my mother. I didn't learn in school, but just as they would have taught, say, in school, is, you know, starting simple, you know, and then working up, and you know, getting into the more maybe more difficult or more detailed as you become more skilled.
Okay, now I know that a lot of patterns come on very soft tissue paper. Is it easier if you transfer that onto a light card to then work with?
I think so. I found, especially if there's a pattern I like that I've used multiple times, you know, it's going to get a little, you know, ratty looking after a while. And finding, you know, some other type of paper, yeah, card, you know, you can find all different types of paper that's a little bit thicker and a little bit sturdier that you could transfer your pattern onto, and it'll probably, you know, last you much longer and in better condition.
Okay, okay. Diana, do you have any tips for beginners?
I would suggest that you start simple and that you just try. Reflecting on what Patty just said, I use a Pellon material called True Grid, which isn't true, by the way. It isn't a 1/8 square, but it's relatively close. And I transfer my patterns to that because I find that I could put it on the cloth and I don't have to pin. it tends to cling to the cloth. And so that saves me a bit of pinning. I don't use fabric weights either. But do what works for you, because even if it's sewing by hand, even if it's simple, I have a little melon shape that I usually give out to my class when I'm doing sewing classes, because it's a simple thing, and 6 of those will make a ball. And it becomes either an adult stress ball or a baby toy.
Mm.
So it sews up relatively fast, and if you don't have a machine, use a needle and thread.
Mm.
Because it sews up pretty fast, and the results are really nice, because people really like having the points come together. It always amazes me that people set such a high mark for themselves, you know, when they're first starting to sew, but your eye tells you what it is that you want to do. And so just follow that, follow your instincts. Your instincts will tell you what to do, but just get into the habit, do it, try it.
Okay.
Do you like it? Do more.
So
Something complicated.
I think the wisdom here is that practice makes perfect in all things. Hey.
And sometimes you have to go out and figure out what you're going to do with what you've made, but that's part of the fun, is because now you have the toy, and you get to go find a group that might have children, or you get to go find a stressed out adult who might need a bit of a relief. So
That's wonderful. That's wonderful. Okay, and Anne, do you have any tips for beginners?
Measure twice, cut once.
Oh, that's a good one. That's a very good one. Yes. And have you ever measured twice and still cut the wrong thing?
Absolutely.
put it in upside down. No, wrong.
I'm human.
Upside down and backwards. And
I love that. Okay, and Anita, as the beginner in the group, do you have any questions that maybe have come up in the last few conversations?
Oh, I'm just relieved to hear that everybody has gone through the same sort of stuff I have, and I'm not as much of a novice as I thought I was.
Okay. Okay.
But I'm willing to try. I want to try this more than I have. So, and I want to get into more complex things. So I guess the idea is just to sort of dig in, give it a try.
I almost feel as though this whole pattern conversation could also be kind of at the root of it, not listening to our negative self-talk. You know, it's not as difficult as all of that, and it just needs a little bit of practice. So just push through. Yeah.
Well, it's also the poor experience I had the first time around in school. So
Okay.
that was a very difficult teacher, and I have to put that behind me. It's been a few years.
Yes.
So,
Yes.
Don't let her stop you from.
No.
Yeah.
Yes, I once had a lecturer at college. I went to advertising school for a year, and I had a lecturer stand behind me one day and say to me, "How could you F up a perfectly good piece of reference like that?" And I was unable to draw in his class ever again. And I would really love to meet him today, because in spite of the fact that I can't draw what I see, I've still managed to make my living in the creative industries my entire adult life, in spite of all of that. But the fear is still real. If I have to pick up a pen and paper and actually, like, say, now draw something, I'm 19 years old again and terrified. So it sometimes takes us longer to put these things behind us than we think, Anita.
One of the things I did with my grandchildren, as soon as they'd come up and say, "Grandma, can you make me something?" I'd say, "Draw me a picture.
Okay.
Show me exactly what it is you want." And you take it because they often put detail in the picture that they wouldn't have told you about. Oh, it needs to have a flower print on it. Okay, well, that makes a difference, doesn't it?
That's lovely. That's a beautiful, gentle way of teaching kids. So, Siska, any tips for beginners?
No, I think it's been covered. I can fully relate to that idea that it has to be perfect. You know, that was our upbringing. But my daughter's upbringing is completely different. Their motto is "have a go." So only as they progress, do they start fine-tuning the skills, you know, whether it's a new language or drawing or dancing, whatever it is. And I've learned so, in the beginning I thought, what is wrong with these schools? You know, just these children, the spelling is wrong, you know. And then I learned, no. It's more important to do the story and to make sure every word is written properly. And I think I have to do the same with sewing. Make a skirt. You know? What if it's not the way it's on the picture, or doesn't matter. Next time it will be better. Yeah.
I love that. I love that. So thank you so much, ladies, for joining us for this meetup today. I appreciate it so very much. We are coming near the end of our time. So I would just like to thank all of you for spending time with me again. I appreciate it so very much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Bye.
Sorry I was late.
Bye.
No, don't worry. It was lovely seeing you. Take care.
Bye-bye now.
Bye-bye, everyone.